All right. So as a preliminary matter, my name is Samantha Holt, Town Staff Conservation Agent for the Newbury Conservation Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members are present and can hear me. Conservation Commission members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Bob Connors.
Yes.
Brad Duffin.
Present.
And I am sorry, Brad, unfortunately, without your video on, I can't add you to the spotlight. So you're just sort of a disembodied voice right now for everybody.
Let me try and figure out how to get my video on.
All right, Dan Streeter.
Yes.
Diane O'Brien.
Yes.
Mary is not in yet. Pete Pecos.
Yes.
And TJ Conti.
Yes.
All right, good evening. This November 1st, 2022 open meeting of the Newbury Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with the act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, which extends the governor's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31st, 2023. Mary is in now. We can add Brad. And Mary is right there. All right. So this order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location and allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video and or telephone conference, and the recording will be available on the Newbury Access YouTube channel. Meeting materials were provided to Conservation Commission members prior to the meeting for review and were posted on the Conservation Commission webpage for public access. Before we turn to the first item on the agenda, please permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. Proponents will be given 10 minutes to present. More time may be allowed at the discretion of the chair. After they conclude their remarks, we will go down the list of commission members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. And further, for all attendees except commission members and staff, please remember to mute your computer using the mute button or your phone using the *6 to toggle mute and unmute when you are not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer unless you have been allowed to do so. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. For any responses, please wait until the floor is yielded to you and state your name before speaking. If commission members wish to engage in discussion with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself when you wish to speak. There will be an opportunity for public comment and questions during public hearings. After commission members have spoken, we will afford the public an opportunity to comment and or ask questions as follows. I will seek questions and comments at the appropriate time through the Zoom raise hand function. For video conference participants, to raise your hand, hover over the bottom of the Zoom window below the photo gallery and click on the yellow hand that appears. If you don't see a yellow hand, click on the participants button. The list of participants will open and display on the right. At the bottom of this participant area, you will see an option to click on a raise hand function. Please ensure your name is fully and correctly displayed on the participant list. You may rename yourself using the more function next to your name. For telephone participants, to raise your hand in a Zoom meeting, hit *9 on your phone's keypad. We will then allow questions and comments from members of the public who have raised their hands in the order in which they appear listed on my screen based on when the function was selected. Each participant will be called upon to provide his or her name and address or affiliation and will be afforded 3 minutes to make comments. More time may be allowed at the discretion of the chair. The proponent or commission members will have the opportunity to reply as needed. Your hand will be lowered when you have been given the floor for your questions. We will then continue down the list of those in the raise hand column and again afford time for responses as needed. All participants are reminded that only matters which fall into the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission may be discussed. The chat feature has been disabled for this meeting, and everyone is expected to conduct themselves in the same manner they would at an in-person meeting. Any disruptions will be addressed once by the chair and should be acknowledged by the disruptor. Any further disruptions will result in complete removal from the meeting with no readmittance. Vulgar or obscene actions or comments will result in immediate removal from the meeting with no readmittance. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, upcoming meeting dates, November 15th, December 6th, and December 20th. All right, the first matter before the commission, meeting minutes, approval of the minutes for September 20th, October 4th, October 18th. Team, do we want to take these separately, or why don't we take a moment and review them? If there's any questions, We can either vote separately or we can just vote it as a block, whatever the pleasure of the commission is. Are there any?
Motion to approve all three.
Okay, do we have a
Second.
second? Do we have any comments or questions or corrections before we vote?
I don't have any comments, Bob, but I wasn't at the September 20th meeting, so I don't know if that means I cannot vote on that one.
That's a good point, Mary. All right, team, why don't we do this? Brad, will you amend your motion to?
Yes, I will. Motion to approve the first set of minutes.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the September 20th meeting minutes. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Roll call vote. All those in favor say aye. Pete,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Dan,
Yeah.
TJ,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. All right, next, the October 4th meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to accept the
So
October?
moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Hey, any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll call a roll call vote. Mary,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes as well. October 18th meeting minutes. Do we have a motion to accept?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any discussion? Hearing none, a roll call vote. All those in favor say aye. Mary,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. All right, thank you. Thank you, Sam, for getting those done. One of the best things about with these recorded meetings, Sam gets to go back and double check the recording to proof out everything, and it lends to accurate meeting minutes. All right, the next order of business, it's a certificate of compliance for Fieldstone Lane, Lot 5, for work to construct a single-family home. Only associated site work and plantings within the 100-foot buffer zone. Sam, can you provide a project overview and a recommendation on this matter?
Yes, so if you're not familiar with Fieldstone Lane, that is the property out behind 15 Coleman Road. It's a subdivision. I believe there are 6 lots, I want to say, 6 houses that are going out there. This one is just for lot 5. There was some grading and some, I believe originally the house was approved to be just slightly within the 100-foot buffer zone. When they actually got into the construction, it's actually outside of the buffer zone now. Everything that was done was actually pushed back about 3 feet away from the wetlands from what was originally approved, but otherwise was done exactly as it was approved in the original filing. All of the plantings that were done look great. The grass is growing up very well, and it all appears to be very well stabilized. And my recommendation would be for a complete certificate.
Okay. Sam, is the applicant present?
He is not. I spoke to him this morning, and unfortunately he's not feeling well today, so.
No, just didn't want to overlook him if he was. All right. Any questions, team? Mary, any questions on this one?
None.
Pete,
No.
Brad,
No.
Dan,
No.
TJ,
Think it sounds good.
Diane,
No.
and the chair has no questions. Any follow-up, Sam, on this one?
Nope.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the
So moved.
certificate of compliance for Lot 5 Fieldstone Lane? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Hey, all those in favor say aye. TJ,
Aye.
Pete,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes as well. All right, next order of business, certificate of compliance for 21 Cottage Road. A request for a complete certificate for work to replace the existing septic system. Sam, can you provide a project overview and a recommendation on this one?
Yes, so some of you guys might actually remember this one from very early on in the summer. This is a septic system replacement. I believe pretty much everything within the 100-foot buffer zone. When I did the inspection, everything appeared to be stabilized pretty well. It all looked really good. So my recommendation would be a complete certificate for this as well.
Is the owner present? Although I don't know why anyone would want to make any comments while you're making a recommendation in favor.
I don't believe the owner is present, and the applicant is actually the former owner, and I don't believe he is present either.
Okay. Any questions from the members on this one, team? Mary, any questions?
Just whether or not, do you know whether or not a certificate of compliance was received by the Board of Health for this?
He submitted both at the same time.
Okay.
So both of them were received last Wednesday, I believe. And I didn't get a chance to, the health director was out all last week at a conference, so she didn't get a chance to look at it, and I only just gave it to her yesterday, so I haven't heard from her on that yet.
Okay, so you have an as-built plan.
Yes, yep.
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Pete, any questions on this one?
No questions.
Thank you, Pete. Brad, any questions?
No, Mr. Chair.
Dan, any questions?
None.
TJ, you must have a question on this
I do not.
one. Diane, how about yourself?
No, I do not.
And I have no questions. All right, is there a motion to approve the certificate of compliance for 21 Cottage Road?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second,
Second.
Hey, all those in favor say aye. TJ,
Aye.
Pete,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
Mary,
yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes as well. All right, we've got about 2 minutes before we get to our first RDA, which is at 7:15. Did everybody enjoy their Halloween? We had 0 kids at our house. I don't know if that's an omen or now I'm stuck with all this candy.
I've been working my way through mine today. So.
Oh, God.
If anybody
Well,
wants to get rid of
we had one.
Hey, but I
We
think
didn't
that
have
was,
any.
that was me, TJ. I was
Yeah.
still dressed up from the other night, but
If
I feel
anybody
bad.
wants to get rid of any excess candy, there is a restaurant in downtown Haverhill that is collecting excess candy from people to send in care packages to troops overseas. If anyone has any interest in
wow,
that,
what a great idea that
they're
is.
doing that. It's Stacks in downtown Haverhill,
Okay.
just in case anybody's interested.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
I think it's a good idea.
Thanks, Sam.
Based on the last 5 years of participation in our neighborhood, we didn't even buy any candy.
Well, you know what? Over time, we had no kids, and then 1 year, and I think it was during COVID. The next thing you know, there's like 15 kids out in the yard. It's like my wife was going to hand out $1 bills for God's sakes. We were so embarrassed. We had
I'm surprised they weren't 20s.
they were little kids, Brad, little kids.
I do
Great.
have 7:15 now, Bob. If
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sam. Okay, we have a request for determination of applicability for 9 6th Street for work to adjust the roof pitch on the existing structure. Sam, can you give us an overview and a recommendation on this one?
yes, so this is the roof currently on the house is partially flat. So what the applicants are looking to do, and I can bring up the plans for you. They are looking to wrong way. They are looking to take the flat portion of the roof, and they are going to be sorry, now I'm going in all the wrong directions. They're looking to connect the edge of the flat portion of the roof to the sloped portion. Excuse me. They're not going to be doing any extra work on the ground. They're not going to be expanding any footprint. It's not an upward expansion. And I don't believe there was any need to go through zoning for this either. So my recommendation for this one would be a -2 determination, excuse me.
Okay. All right, is the
And we do
applicant?
have the applicants here if you have any questions for them.
Yeah, if they want to add anything to that or just be available to answer questions from the members, that'd be great. All right, Mary, any questions on this one?
No, just about material storage, stockpiling during construction. Is there a site available to do that without impacting existing dune vegetation?
All right, are we on? Are we still on? Can you hear us?
Yes,
Yes, you can. Give us your name and address, please, if you would.
Ed and Lorraine Manning, number 9, 6th Street, Newbury.
All right, there are no dunes there. We're not on any. Is that what she, is that what Mary, is that what you asked?
Samantha, if you could rotate the photos, that would, yeah, then we can. Thanks.
I think the driveway would be the primary, and the land right in front of it, this primary storage.
Got it. Okay.
Pete, any questions?
No questions, thank you.
Brad, any questions?
No, no, Mr. Chair.
Dan, how about yourself? Any questions on this one?
No, thank you.
TJ,
No questions.
Diane,
nope,
and the chair has no questions. All right. Is there a motion to issue a negative determination for 9 6th Street?
So moved.
Do we have a
Second.
second? Okay, roll call vote. All those in favor say aye. TJ,
Aye.
Pete,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
Harry,
Yes.
Diane,
yes,
and the chair votes yes. All right, great. Okay, now we have 5 Harvard Way.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay, have
you.
a good night now.
Night.
5 Harvard Way is another RDA for work to replace existing propane tank and service line to meet gas code. Sam, can you give us an overview and a recommendation on this one?
Yes, so this is actually an after the fact permit. Unfortunately, Ms. Gerard had, when her propane tanks were getting refilled, she was told by the company that came to refill them that they were in violation of the plumbing and gas codes, and needed to be relocated. And she was running very low on propane to service her house. So she was given a temporary administrative approval and asked to submit the RDA after the fact, just to cover all of the bases. These are some photos of during the trenching and everything. The propane tanks are now located over here by the shed. Everything that was here previously, there was no vegetation or anything. It was actually mostly covered by pine needles from the tree above it. So there was no vegetation loss or anything, just the trenching, which was replaced exactly as it was before, and the propane tanks relocated.
Okay, thank you, Sam. All right, any questions, team? Mary, any questions on this one?
Well, so this one is in a B zone, it looks like as well. So
Yes.
I think we need to condition whatever we do to make sure that these tanks are secured. And I think maybe we have some standard conditions regarding that. Is that your recollection, Sam?
Yeah, typically when I issue these, if for a condition like that, it would just be that it has to meet the plumbing and gas codes and the applicable codes. I believe the securing the regulations for securing the propane tanks are in the plumbing and gas codes. So that's part of something that they do for the V zone.
It
So that's typically
specifically,
how-
it specifically references the V zone in those codes, you think?
I believe it does, yes.
Okay, because, yeah, I mean, oftentimes I'll see towns require that the tanks be elevated above the flood zone. I'm not sure, it's such a minor impact. I'm not sure that's really necessary in this case. My only concern would be that they're secured so that they don't become loosened during a storm. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Pete, any questions on this one?
No, I actually have the same concerns, because we've seen this repetitively.
Yeah, you know what? That's a good point. Sam, I think when this came up the last time, we asked you to see if you could speak with the plumbing inspector to verify that this is a code requirement. I don't know. if you
I
had
haven't had a chance to speak to him about it. I can try to give him a call tomorrow just to check in. But I believe when I was doing some of my own research, I found it in some of like the, I don't know what the name of the code book is. It's got like some acronym on it. But I
Yeah,
can
mean,
definitely give him a call
in all
before.
honesty, I'm 99% positive, but I haven't bothered to look it up. But I mean, it's regardless whether we have jurisdiction or not, it's a good recommendation, so it doesn't get overlooked. I think it's pretty much the point I think we're all making on it. But, all right, Pete, anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Brad, any comments on this one?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brad. Dan, any comments on this one?
Yeah, I don't know about the plumbing code, but I know that it's there's an NFPA code which the gas inspector may not, pay attention to. It might be an actual fire department responsibility, but there are many ways of doing this. It's small helical anchors. It's something that would be good to kind of clear up, so we don't have tanks floating around. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. TJ, any questions on this one?
Nothing further, no.
Okay. Diane, any questions?
No.
All right, and the chair has no questions. All right, is there a motion to issue a negative determination for 5 Harvard Way?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Can
Mary?
we, I just wanted to
Oh, excuse me.
jump to the discussion part of that motion, if we could, just that we include a condition, that there be a requirement that the tanks be secured in a manner satisfactory to the building inspector and the fire department.
Very good point. Sam, I think you've been incorporating some phraseology to meet all of the local and state codes.
Right, yeah.
That's how you've been doing that.
Yep.
Okay. But it'd be great if we can get clarification on it. That way
Yep, yeah, I can talk to the building commissioner about it tomorrow, and if he doesn't know, I can try to give the plumbing inspector a call.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mary. Any other comments before we do a roll call? Sorry, I jumped the gun on that one. All right, hearing no further questions. Mary?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Pete?
Yes.
Brad?
Aye.
Dan?
Yes.
TJ?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right, the next matter is 3 Sandy Way. It's a request for determination for work to enclose the underside of an existing home raised on pilings. Sam, can you provide an overview on this one?
All right, so this was a house that I believe in. Dan and I kind of went back and forth a little bit on the original order of conditions, and Christine, correct us if we're wrong. Believe this was constructed back in 2007. Currently, it is open on the bottom, as you can see. What they are proposing is to include, if allowable, they're proposing to include some vinyl sheeting underneath the house to close off underneath it. And then I believe now it's covered, but I believe it does say that they're willing to do lattice work as well, if that would be preferable. This house is in, I think there might be a very tiny sliver of it that's in zone X, but it is mostly in the AE 13 floodplain.
Okay. Yeah, the state building code actually addresses now that 2 feet of freeboard.
Right.
So they can build a solid structure down to within 2 feet of grade. And then typically I defer to everyone. You've seen it with ladders, so that 50-50 kind of step, 50% is open and 50% is closed, the way it's the slats and the bottom 2 feet go. But is the applicant here, Sam?
Yes, I am here.
Okay, if you could give us your name and address for the record.
Christine Florio at 3 Sandy Way.
Okay. All right, Christine, anything you want to add to Sam's?
It's pretty straightforward. I want to thank her for walking me through the application in this process. But basically, it just gets very cold under my house, and my kitchen floor is so cold in the winter. And one of the pipes under the house often freezes, even though we've re-insulated it numerous times when it's extra cold and windy. And I just think it's going to be great if I can kind of block off that wind, especially on the north and the east side, from blowing under my house. But I know that I see going around the island, they never go down all the way to the bottom with the solid, like you said, to put the lattice or something like that at the bottom. I guess the idea is the sand can blow through it. So I'm okay with doing that. And we won't be touching the ground or disturbing the ground, to do it. It's just attach the vinyl sheets to the house and the pilings just to keep the wind out, around most sides, and keep it open on one part so I can go under to get my kayaks and bikes.
All right, anything else?
I think that's it from me,
Okay, great.
unless you have questions.
Let me do this. Let me open it up to the members for questions. Mary, any questions?
Yeah, it looks like this house constructed in around 2007. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
And so there's probably an old order of conditions on it, or not that old anyway, there might have been some discussion about whether or not the underside had to remain open or not. Now, typically the commission doesn't put perpetual conditions on it, but that might be something we should probably just double check on.
Well, there wasn't at the time because I didn't care to enclose it. And even now, part of me doesn't want to enclose it because I do like being open and being able to go get my kayaks, and I like it being open. But like I say, I didn't realize how cold it was going to be in the winter, and especially with high costs of heating and fuel and my electric bills. It just makes sense at this point to close in that part because of the wind. We never looked into doing it in the past. It wasn't an issue that we couldn't do it. We just didn't want to do it.
I see. Okay, thank you. So obviously you're on a barrier beach, and it's DEP regulates it as dune, and they want to keep it as open as possible underneath so that the sand can migrate if it needs to. And then you're also in a flood zone, so you have to stay out of that. So in a best case scenario, you wouldn't be able to fully enclose it to only within 2 feet of above grade, which wouldn't improve your, I don't know how much that would improve your, the cold flooring, because you're still going to have it open underneath. So, and this doesn't provide a lot of information about how this is going to be constructed, if you need to install any additional posts, or you're just going to kind of install it against the existing pilings that are there.
Yeah, I think it's actually going to improve it a lot to not have that wind going through as much at the top. Like I say, that pipe that freezes, that wind not going through, I think that's going to make a big difference. And to install it, it's just going to basically be attached to the pilings. There's no reason to add anything more. It's going to be attached to the house and the pilings. They're going to put the bolts, 2x4s into the pilings, and then just attach it to that. It's not going to be attached to the ground or anything.
Right.
It's not going to disturb the ground at all.
Right. I hear what you're saying. Thank you.
Anything else, Mary?
No, that's all. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Pete, any questions for this?
No, I think as long as it stays within code and adjusts 2 feet off from the base, I think that's good.
Okay, thank you, Pete. Brad, any comments on this one?
No, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brad. Dan, any comments or questions?
Yeah, so, when I saw this the first time, I was curious about the order of conditions that was granted in the application. It just seemed like there would be a reason why this was left open maybe it was that vegetation could grow underneath the structure. And there were a lot of DEP comments at the time about dune performance standards and so on. So, you know, I'm a little, it seems like we're missing a bit of information in that regard. And some of that's due to the fact that Conservation Commission's records were, you know, disposed of because of mold.
Fortunately, this was one of them.
Well, I can tell you, because I was involved with the building of it with my dad. And when it was built, I didn't want to spend more money than I needed to, and there was no reason to enclose it. There really wasn't. I was only there in the summers. I wasn't there in the winters when I first built it. Now I'm year round. I didn't used to be year round when I built it. And the electric bills were not nearly as high when I first built it. Now my bills, I just put solar panels on because the bills were over $1,000 a month. And that pipe didn't freeze because I wasn't there in the winter. And now I have the problem with the shower pipe freezing. So you can't shower on the first floor in the winter. And like I say, this is going to make a big difference. And I know a lot of the houses, they're blocked in at the bottom because it does, I think, keep the winds from blowing under and keep it warmer under there.
So I'm just looking at this picture here now. This is the only recent photograph I've seen. It does appear to have dune grass sort of drifting underneath the structure.
To be honest with you, that's not a recent photo. That was from the assessor's records, which is an old photo.
Yeah.
I mean, I have recent photos on my phone, but I don't know if I hold it up,
Yeah.
if you'd be able to see them.
Well,
Because now I have kayaks under there and bikes and chairs and things under the house that I
So
didn't have
if-
when it was built.
I'm a little reluctant because I think we don't have the full story. And I would like to just sort of, my understanding of the dune performance standards in a case like this, 2 foot open at the bottom, then 50% above that. And that's kind of been something that I believe we followed for a number of years.
Okay, I guess I have a question on that. I understand the 2 feet open at the bottom, but what are you saying, 50% above that? What?
50% open, in other words, 50, like snow fence, basically. That's 50% open. No shadow box that's, I've been here for a while, and that's kind of what I recall. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay,
I'm just gonna throw that out there. The other commissioners can, you know, what we allow here is probably gonna be what we allow going forward everywhere.
okay, well, let me tell you, I was bike riding around Plum Island, as I often do, and I have a whole bunch of houses here. Matter of fact, Bob, your house is closed underneath. 31 Annapolis Way, 37 Annapolis Way, 39 Annapolis Way. Then you get 30 Annapolis Way, 636 Fordham Way, 4 Southern Boulevard, 17 Southern Boulevard. There are very few that are not closed underneath up to the 2 feet point at least. And these are even enclosed all the way to the bottom and they're on the ocean.
Let me just interrupt you for a second if I could. One, you need to go through the chair. We can't be talking back and forth. And two, I have an answer for Dan. Dan, the state building code in conjunction with DEP, and I sat on a task force for the BBRS on this, was when we incorporated the 2 foot of freeboard, where that the walls could be solid down to within the 2 feet, and then it was 50% from there to meet the dune performance standards. And that's what the state code did. And it was a change of the code petitioned by DEP. Because again, we can't compete with the state building code. We can apply to have an amendment to it. And that's what DEP did to eliminate the confusion on the 2 feet of freeboard for dune migration. So the standard is simply that foundation or the pilings can be enclosed solid with siding that matches the rest of the house to within 2 feet of the ground, and then it can be open 50% to allow dune migration. And I just happen to have sat on that task force for that. But all right, Dan, anything else, Dan?
Yeah, I just sort of, I'm not sure I heard you exactly, because you kind of went from 2 foot from grade, and then you said 50% open.
Yeah, so if you're looking at this house, Dan, they could continue all the siding or whatever they want, a solid structure, down to within 2 feet of grade. The remaining 2 feet can be 50% open with lattice or,
Okay,
and that's what DEP had petitioned to get an amendment to the state building code. So there wouldn't be a conflict because it's,
okay.
the state, no one can compete with the state building code, but we have an opportunity to go for variances or to seek an amendment. And that's what DEP had done at that time.
Okay, I stand corrected. Thank you.
Bob, that's specifically for barrier beaches, dune environments?
Well, any DEP, anywhere they wanted 2 feet of freeboard, Mary. So it would be for dune migration.
Right, I'm just saying, is that for any flood zone, or is that specifically for a flood zone in,
Yeah, it was for
dune.
dune. Yeah, it was for dune migration, not for
Okay.
flood.
all right, thank you. Yep.
Okay. All right, Dan. Anything else before I move on?
No, that's good.
Okay, thank you, Dan. TJ, any comments?
No comments.
Thank you, Diane. Any comments?
I just had a question, maybe procedure. Wouldn't the order of conditions be recorded at the registry?
I did find it on the registry website. Unfortunately, I added the order conditions to the Dropbox today when I found it. Unfortunately, it doesn't provide a lot. The most information that it really provides is like references to plans, but I don't have any of the plans, unfortunately, because this was one of the files that had to be destroyed from flood damage. So kind of the best that we have is references to plans and like the special conditions, but unfortunately there wasn't a ton in the special conditions that even touches on anything related to this really, except for maybe the 75% vegetation survivability, but that's about
But
it.
if there was a restriction on building, it probably would have been mentioned in the special restrictions, right?
So for that, I don't think we would have put a perpetual restriction. If there was any sort of a restriction, it could potentially be in like the building file, but I don't think they really do any of that either.
I mean, team, what we have to remember is we're here to enforce the WPA Town Wetlands Bylaw. We cannot address matters that are outside of jurisdiction, such as ZBA, building code standards, animal control, Board of Health, or public safety. And certainly this is a building code standard that DEP, to their credit, to eliminate confusion for us, because different communities interpret it differently. That is the building code standard for dune migration. So we don't have jurisdiction to condition building code standards.
Mary does have her hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Mary.
Yes, I'm trusting you on that, Bob, and you're sounds like you're very well informed. My only other question is whether or not there was ever a certificate of compliance issued for that file number.
Very good question.
As far as I could tell, there wasn't one recorded with the registry. And like I said, I don't have the file, so I don't know if one was ever issued and just wasn't recorded. But Christine has her hand up and I bet she might have an answer for that.
Yes, it was
Christine,
all
yeah.
built. Not the approval talk. It was all built according to the conditions. It was supposed to be built upon in order to get my certificate of occupancy, because I was renting it out at the time. We had to make sure everything was in compliance, and it was all in compliance. And there were no restrictions about what I could do down the line under the house. I can guarantee you that. There were no
But Christine, I think that matter has been put to rest. The question is, once you have an open order of conditions, there's one more step that you come back to the commission to get a certificate of compliance. That's the only question as I understand it right now.
You got
Yeah, we got all that. Because I rented it out. I had to get everything in, all my ducks in order to rent it out.
But Christine, the certificate of occupancy is different than a certificate of compliance. And I know it's It's confusing, it can be laborious. But I think I think where Mary is going on this, typically, and Sam could help you walk through this, if you do not have a certificate of compliance, you need one because it would solve a defect in your title from the order of conditions. And it's simply filing a form. If you were on our meeting earlier, we did a number of them.
Right.
And so if we can verify there's a certificate of compliance, what we've done in the past, Christine, is we've recommended you come in and get a certificate of compliance, and we can address the RDA at the same time.
Right, but sorry.
If you have if you have a copy of the certificate of compliance, not the building department certificate of occupancy, then you're all set. It just needs to get recorded and give Sam a copy.
I'm not going to have any of that. That was 15 years ago. All those, I
Right.
only keep records 7 years, but
Yeah.
I would think the town should have some records.
So like I said earlier, this was unfortunately back when the town hall was still on High Road. All of our files were stored in the basement. And there was some flooding that damaged a lot of the files that we had. And due to health hazards, I believe we got a sort of variance of, we got permission, an emergency permission from the open meeting law office from the Attorney General to destroy a lot of those files that were damaged because they were moldy. And unfortunately, this was one of the ones that looks to have been destroyed because I don't have any record of the file. All I have is the order of conditions that was recorded with the registry, but it does not, when I was looking, I looked for 3 Sandy Way, and I believe on the assessor's map, this house is actually located on the parcel for 16 12th Street. So I looked for 16 12th Street as well. And there were no certificates of compliance that were recorded with the registry.
It actually was 14 12th Street, I believe. Maybe it was also 16, but it was 14 at the time. But I don't think that should be held against me that the town lost the records due to mold or whatever it was 15.
No, I think Mary, Christine, I think the point is, we're actually trying to help you
Yeah.
to an extent where that what I would suggest is go talk to Sam. She can walk you through filling out a simple form for the certificate of compliance. We'll put it on our next meeting. You'll get your certificate of compliance if Sam finds that everything is in order. And we could consider addressing the RDA at the same time. But so let me stop there and ask the members if that's something that we want to do. We have a precedent that we established that we needed to close out certificates of compliances before we would consider an RDA. Do we have any concern with addressing the certificate of compliance at our next meeting if Christine elects to file the application? And then if we issue it, address the RDA that is before us tonight. Mary, what are your thoughts on an approach like that?
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I mean, the certificate of compliance can come back to bite the applicant, as we know, if they sell the
absolutely, yeah,
property.
yeah.
It's having an order of conditions without one can be a nightmare. So I think it's a good idea to do the certificate of compliance for them. I'd be willing personally to waive the requirement for any as-built plans since we can't have it. We don't have anything to compare it to.
Right.
So it's not a huge burden for the applicant in terms of the paperwork that's required. And then I think that ultimately I'm in agreement with what you've described in terms of the ability for us to regulate or allow the work that she's proposing now. I'm comfortable with that. So, but I would rather follow our procedures and get the certificate of compliance closed out first before issuing a permission for additional work.
Okay. So Christine, I'm going to make a recommendation for you. We're all in agreement prior to voting that what you want to do, closing it down to within 2 feet and then putting lattice, the bottom 2 feet, isn't presenting any problems. I think we're actually doing you a favor to get you the certificate of compliance and get it recorded at the Registry of Deeds, because if you ever went to refinance your house or sell it or what have you, it would be considered a minor title defect, and you'd have to do it then. And you usually find out these things at the worst possible time, like 2 days before a loan is closing or you're selling your house. But so I'm going to make a recommendation that you ask us to continue this RDA until the next meeting, which is November 15th. It's 2 weeks from now. And go down and see Sam tomorrow, and she'll walk you through filling out the form for a certificate of compliance. It's not at all that painless, and it'll be relatively quick, and I think it cleans up everything you should be doing. Does that sound like a plan?
Well, I'm not going to be able to go down tomorrow because I'm
Well,
not.
you know, as long as you can do it in, what would be the cutoff, Sam, for her to see you before?
Would be next Tuesday.
And
Okay,
how
okay.
long does it take to do this? Because maybe I maybe could come Friday.
The town offices are closed on Friday, but so the COC request form is actually on the website. So the same place that you got the RDA form from, it's in on that same webpage. So you can get it off of that, fill everything out. If you need a copy of the order of conditions, I can email it to you. I have it saved on my computer, so I can send that to you so you can fill out the right information on it. And then once I get the COC request form, I can come out and do the inspection for it. And like Mary said, we can waive the need for an as-built plan and everything, which really speeds up the process for you, I promise. Just
Yeah.
trying to get an engineer to do that right now is going to be
Yeah.
awful.
I would also suggest, just to make sure it's clean, that because the order of conditions referenced 14 to 16 12th Street, and this RDA is a different, you're using a different number for the certificate of compliance, you should at least put 14, 16, 12th Street, now 3 Sandy Way, or whatever it is. So you're carrying over the correct address on the certificate of compliance form.
Okay, now this is my thing. To go back 15 years, like you lost the records and now you're holding me up with this and making me come back another time. I can understand, okay, for my own sake, yes, I need to go get that certificate of compliance for my own sake. But I don't understand why I would need to get it, why you just can't approve this now so I don't have to come back another time, where it's not my fault you guys lost that. And if it's going to be approved anyways, why don't we do it now?
But Christine, we didn't lose the certificate of compliance. You didn't record one.
Does it have to be recorded? I don't believe
Yeah,
it.
It does. It's a
That's the problem.
requirement. Yeah, that's the problem, Christine.
You're saying they have to be recorded
They
by law.
have to be recorded. Well, what happens is you have to record your order of conditions, and your order of conditions remain actually until it's closed out by a certificate of compliance. It's considered a title defect, and you'll be required to do it.
Well, we can't put this on for 2 weeks because I'm not certain I'm going to be able to get down there that quickly because I work in Worcester. I'm not there all the time. And if you're not open on Fridays, that's the only day I'm there Fridays.
If
So-
you
Mail.
if you email me a copy, if you fill out the certificate of compliance request form and email me a copy of it and mail the fee for it, as long as I get the fee eventually and I know that it's on the way, I can work around that. So if you email me a copy of the COC request form, we can work it out with that. So you don't have to bring in a hard copy of it.
And how much is the fee?
It's $100 fee for the COC.
Okay, well, I'll have to figure this out. Like, it just doesn't seem right to me that I'm paying this again if I already did it, but just because it wasn't recorded, I mean, that just doesn't seem right. But it is what it is. So I guess we'll just postpone this, whatever you need to do.
Well, why don't we do this? Sam, why don't you work with Christine, and I think we're all fine putting this on at the next meeting if it's ready to go.
I don't have to advertise it again, do I?
Nope.
No, not at all.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Pete.
if the applicant is acceptable to this motion, I would like to ask for a continuance of this until our next meeting.
Second.
Okay, Christine, are you fine continuing this to our next meeting? See if we
Well,
can
it
work
doesn't
this out
sound like
for
I
you?
have a choice if you're not going to approve it this meeting.
Yeah, we cannot take final action on what your request is while there's an open certificate of compliance. It's just been the policy of the commission. So are you okay with us continuing
Yeah.
this for 2 weeks? Okay. All right, we have a motion, a second. All those in favor say aye. Mary,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes,
TJ,
Yes.
Diane,
Yes.
chair votes yes. Thank you, Christine.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Now, we certainly are beyond 7:30. Continued public hearings, 80 Northern Boulevard for work to construct an upward expansion of an existing structure. Sam, what's the status of this? This been continued?
It has, so, Mr. Ward asked for a continuance to the December 6th meeting. This one went in front of zoning a few weeks ago, and he has a few changes that need to be made at their request, so he wants to make sure that everything gets handled there first, and then he'll come back in. And at least as long as he has a better idea of what they're looking for and better feelings about what he's got on there, he'll be ready to come back in. But he did request a continuance to December 6th.
Okay. All right, do we have a motion to continue
Wait.
this? I mean, this isn't a public hearing, actually. Go ahead, Diane.
Sam, there were comments on this one on the DEP site, so you might want to alert him to that beforehand.
Yeah, he is aware of them. There's a lot of weird stuff with DEP. There seems to be no pleasing them sometimes. So one of their comments was that there's priority habitat on the property. And he didn't do a natural heritage filing because he's not going to have any impact on it. He's far enough away from it that he's not even going to go into that area. So there's not going to be any impact to it. And another one was that we noted that some amount of alteration that, it was that the house is obviously on the beach and it's in floodplain and everything. So we noted that how much of the property is in those areas. And they said they wanted to know what the alteration was about because none was described in the narrative, but there is no alteration. But if we don't add that in there, we get yelled at anyways. So
Well, you know what? That'll be something that he can work out at the.
yeah, and all of it will be addressed as well in an order of conditions, regardless of whether it's an approval or denial. It'll all get clarified in that there are those resources on the property, but there won't be any impact, and that the commission has reviewed that and discussed it and is aware of it. So.
And team, just as a point, we usually don't have any discussion on a continuance. So do we have a motion to continue this matter to December 6th, 2022? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor? Mary,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Dan,
yes,
TJ,
Aye.
Diane,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. All right, so 80 Northern. Now 26 Northern Boulevard. A continued public hearing for work to replace existing deck and boardwalk. Sam, can you provide a project overview and a recommendation on this matter?
Yes, so we originally heard this one. Dave Mullen is with us tonight. He is the applicant and the property owner. We originally heard this one. He gave a brief description of it. Some of the commission members asked to have a site plan, and I believe one of the DEP comments said that they were waiting for plans as well. So Dave worked with Tom Hughes and Everett Chandler and got a plan added, which I provided to you guys in the Dropbox last week. And I believe that there is now some planting mitigation because some of the boardwalk is going to be widened a little bit to provide better accessibility. So there is some planting. I can show you. This is the plan that Tom provided. So there's some planting over here. And then he provided some information. There's some like elevations and topo lines and everything on it. And I think that's about all I have. Tom did say that in the email that he sent me today, he said that we can feel free to discuss it and Dave and I can answer questions as best we can. And then if there's any feedback or questions or anything, we can continue it until the 15th to get everything finished up.
Okay. Sam, does the owner want to speak? Mr. Mullen?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I was in front of you a month ago and Mary gave great advice around getting the site plan, which we now have. I retained Tom Hughes and Everett, as Sam has highlighted. The reason we're continuing it for 2 weeks is we want to make sure the DEP has time to review and comment if they so choose on the updated plans. They have not received a hard copy yet, so we want to give them time to do that. And unfortunately, Tom Hughes was not available to meet this evening. He had a prior commitment with Newburyport and couldn't address any questions. But I know, Mr. Connors, you just mentioned that you don't typically discuss continuances, but if there were any questions or anything that I need to be prepared for next week's hearing, you know, I do have a short window of time to get this rebuilt and updated because I have the conditions that say nothing can happen after March 31st. So I will start to get into the dead of winter and then have a small window in March. So if there were any questions or comments or anything that I should be prepared to for next week, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, no, I think what we can do, we'll go through all the members, ask questions, and then Mr. Mullen, you can decide whether you want to continue it after you get all the questions.
Sure thing.
And I think the rule of thumb is if you can't answer all the questions yourself, you probably got your answer you want to.
Exactly.
You know. All right, well, so why don't we open this up to the members? TJ, do you have any questions on this one?
So what is being expanded on this from the
Sure.
this
only thing
just this part?
Yeah, what you can see is what's been highlighted with dashes.
Yeah.
Literally, the boardwalk is 30 inches wide that comes up to the left side of the house and then heads out to the wood patio.
Correct.
And we're simply expanding it to 36 inches just to create what will be accessibility, ADA compliance for family members as I age. And the one other expansion is just at the far left of on the lower left corner of the house. There's a very narrow deck that traverses the left-hand side of the house. And I'm simply expanding it a little bit and following the path because there's a door there and it becomes very, very tight. So I was hopeful to expand it just to allow for easier access at that doorway. If that's not acceptable to the commission, I'm happy to leave it as it is, but thought if I'm replacing the pilings, because what's happening is, and you'll see in the pictures, the pilings are actually sinking into the sand. So it all needs to be rebuilt anyway. So I thought an opportunity to provide a little bit of better access at that doorway, but it will largely follow that path up the left-hand side of the house.
Okay.
Sam, one question for Sam. Sam, Tom usually has a table of what is there a table on this? I can't see the whole plan. Does he give us a table?
Seeing one.
Okay.
And I honestly, I think the mitigation that they're doing over here is only because of it's ultimately it's a very mild expansion. Right. It's a pretty minimal expansion on the boardwalk and the deck. And I believe when I talked to Tom, he said that there was going to be during the actual installation of all of this stuff, especially in the boardwalk, that there was going to be some impact on the vegetation, I went out there with Dave and took a look at it. Some of the vegetation does indeed go right up to the edge of the boardwalk. Some of it's kind of going through the boardwalk because it's in disrepair. So there is going to be some impact on the vegetation just during the construction. And then with the 6 inches of additional space on parts of it, and with the deck. So I believe this is just to help mitigate that.
You know what? I think it would be helpful if Tom added the table that showed what he's replicating, you know, what the ratio.
Okay.
All right.
I don't
think
know.
If it's not on usually Tom does that, and
I'm gonna see. I don't know
simple
if
to do.
he sent. I don't think he sent a like
You know,
a
David, it's a
narrative
pretty
with
easy
it.
thing for him to add.
Yeah, for sure. Because this was Everett's plan, like, I don't think
Okay.
Tom added anything to it, so. we
Okay,
can ask
that's the difference. Everett did it, not Tom. That's
Everett did it, we can, and I'll make sure that
Okay.
Tom for next week that he comes with exactly that.
Yeah, if he has that table, I think, Mary, you would agree that would just add some clarity to these questions.
Great,
Okay.
thank you for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I just
Tom,
wanted to check to make sure he didn't submit like a
Separate, yeah.
narrative with it, but I don't see one. So
Okay.
Okay, TJ, any other questions? before I
No,
move
I'm
on?
good now.
Pete, any questions on this?
I'm good with the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Brad, any discussions?
All good, Mr. Chair.
Dan, any questions or discussions or comments?
You know, with Tom being involved, it would be nice if there were some more photographs, particularly showing the very end of the wood structure, the beach end of it. I think it's kind of way up it's like elevated quite a bit. And I'm just sort of wondering, you know, why that's there. You can't really get down to the beach from it conveniently. Just some clarity on that would be good.
We can add some pictures for sure. At that very edge, there's probably, I would say 18 inches or to 24-inch drop. It's not a significant drop, but it's not flat right to that lower dune. But we can provide those pictures for sure.
Dan, anything else? Okay, Mary, any questions on this one?
Just a couple quick ones. The propane tank, does that have to be moved?
The propane tank, what I'd like to do is I would eventually like to move it to the other side. It is not affixed to the house. Because I just acquired the property back in June, I've taken over the Townsend Energy agreement, and I said the tank isn't affixed to the building, which Tom even highlighted to me, and I think it was something you discussed in an earlier matter, that what I'd like to do is bring all of the mechanicals to the other side of the property. The air conditioning unit is on that other side. It is oil heat, so that propane tank is simply for the gas stove and there's a gas fireplace. But I would like to have them all together and put on a platform, but that's going to be part of another permit that's going to come through when I do some remodeling of the home in a year from now. So for now, it will not be moved, Mary, to answer a short question.
Thank you. And how high above grade is this walkway now? It would be helpful to have kind of a profile view, just a typical profile of, you know, what the footings are going to look like and how high above grade this walkway is intended to be.
Sure. I thought they were, and Sam, I think you're on mute. I thought they were included in the plans, the elevations, because Tom showed me where they were above flood, that I was the 26, 23 or 26 feet.
yeah, so you can kind of see it's
The topo is shown, but yes, it's right. It's pretty much at grade. And so I think if we're going to we're replacing a boardwalk, it shouldn't necessarily be at grade. So I would suggest that he look at that as well and provide us just a simple construction detail showing the elevation above grade.
Sure thing. Sam, you have that, like, I've noted that in my brain, but if I forget.
yeah, I'll write it down.
Okay.
The meetings are recorded. You can always play them back. There you go.
Perfect. All this is somewhat foreign to me, but that's
Okay.
super helpful.
Mary, any other questions?
No, that's all. Oh, one more thing. Do we know anything about when all this wood patio and everything was constructed? I know you're a recent owner, but is this something that's been there forever and ever? Or
Honestly, by looking, and Sam was out because I had her come take a look at it with me. This is at least 20 years old. It is in such horrible disrepair. I can't walk with bare feet. Splinters galore. We've had several people with splinters. It's it's a real mess. And some of the pictures will show you all the boards are warping. I simply want to do a replacement of what exists.
Yep.
It's really, and she unfortunately, oh, Sam, if you could go back a couple too, I want to show you, there is a fair bit of open sand for the replacement that Tom has highlighted, just so you have that too, when we come back in 2 weeks. But yes, Mary, it's in horrible disrepair, and I just simply wanted to resurface it. I had Sam come out and ask about an applicability, and she said, you know what, given the size of what you're doing here, we probably should come before the full commission for this approval.
Yeah.
What we're doing.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I just think that we need to bring the patio sort of into some kind of compliance with current rules. So it's really more like a deck that probably should be elevated above grade.
And elevated above grade, is there a minimum inches that?
2 feet, I think, is what we're looking for.
And okay, that's helpful. I'll bring that advice back to Tom Hughes. The concern, of course, I have is that does that then require railings? Do people slip off? Are there now twisted ankles, broken ankles as people are walking up and down?
I believe, because I just had a discussion about this with somebody the other day, doing a proposal inland, not on Plum Island. But I believe anything over 36 inches, so 3 feet above the ground, would require railings. So I believe under 36, you don't need them. But I would definitely talk to the building commissioner about that to make sure that that is correct.
If it were that, and we can certainly talk about it in 2 weeks with Tom, I have great concern around slipping off of that. And a 2 feet drop is not modest for older elderly people, and without a railing, and then all of a sudden all the infrastructure and what that has to end up looking like. I'd rather just keep what this is and lay down some sort of mat over it so that there are no splinters, but leaving it as it is, versus doing, and we can talk about that with Tom in 2 weeks.
The other option is to just shrink it in size and use that as mitigation or something like that. But Tom knows the rules, so he.
Okay.
Yeah, Mary, I'm actually very familiar with this property. It was owned by Sue Thomas.
Yes.
These pathways or walkways have been there in excess of 20, 25 years. And really, it's a walkway, it's a walk over the dune rather than a deck. But
okay. Well, yeah, it looks like there's a big patio area. I guess I was more concerned.
Oh yeah, the patio area would be elevated because it's at the different you can see the two different elevations.
Yeah.
Sam, if you point out the actual the decrepit firewood that's on the grade is the walkway in question, David. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay.
Keeping this, ideally keeping this at that level, which allows for, and if people are concerned with the expansion of 36 inches, I'd be happy to leave it at 30 inches as it is, but just replacing those boards, raising this entire thing up and then having that possibility of walking along here with the 2 feet on either side, I think it will be I'd have to really think about safety and insurance.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And problematic. It's super problematic. I'm happy to concede as we get further up, making sure it's elevated up, and we can talk about that as dunes come up to the left of either side, that when you do raise it some, it doesn't feel as far of a drop, even though 2 feet is within. But I'd appreciate the perspective of safety and accessibility as much as what I'm trying to do here and satisfy all the requirements that exist.
Okay.
So, team, as I look at this is an existing non-conforming walkway. If he restores it in its current size and location, he has that, from my perspective, by right. If he starts tinkering with it or expanding it, then we're getting into the pavement versus pavers type of discussion in my mind. So, no, I think, David, you're getting some feedback. Tom will help you with this. And
yes.
Okay.
I appreciate it all. Thank you so much.
Okay. Mary, anything else before I move on?
No, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Mary. Diane, any questions for David on this one?
No.
Okay. And I have no questions on this. David, I would suggest that if you expand what you're doing, I think it adds a new dimension to this. And you go from probably having a grandfathered structure to, you're opening the door for, as Mary says, that it could be considered new construction where you're going to be required to elevate it.
Great feedback, and I would rather keep what exists to repair it, which was simply why I came before you all. The one question I will have is on the elevated portion by that door for accessibility, does that get called into question, given it is very, very high out that door? Can I still come back in 2 weeks with that expansion, but keeping the walkway and everything that exists on the ground exactly the same? It's simply a repair or replace of what exists, no expansions.
I think Tom can give you some guidance
Okay.
on that. It's just looking at pictures, that the deck is well above 2 feet.
Yes, yes.
So that probably eliminates
And it's gonna,
to migration.
and it's gonna follow the path such that by the time it gets in within 2 feet, it's right at the same width it is now. Thank you very much. I appreciate
Okay.
it.
All right, so David, you have 2 choices. Would you like? us
Hold
to-
on, Dan's got his hand up.
Oh, okay.
If I
Dan.
could just add one more,
Sorry, Dan. Excuse me.
no, that's fine. If I could add just one more sort of something to think about is, rather than keeping everything the same and having that replication area, I would certainly be open to the idea of increasing the width, but getting rid of some of the other stuff, that last little jump to the beach, let's say, or shrinking that down to just a walkway and not a patio type thing.
Yeah.
So,
So Dan, are you saying square footage for square footage? That if he's got 1,000 square feet now and he wants to reconfigure it, it can't exceed or whatever the square footage is?
that's pretty much what I'm talking about. It's just
Okay.
trying to get a little bit more dune performance. You can see in the topographical map there now, there is sort of it's in a depression. Those structures are having some impact. So but that's just another way of thinking about it. Just throwing it out.
Dan, I
Dan,
appreciate.
sorry. Oh,
I appre-
sorry.
No, go ahead, Sam.
I want to make sure that I have what Dan's saying correct so that when I talk to you about it, Dave, I can
Yeah.
make sure that I'm giving you the right information.
Right.
So Dan, you mean so to be able to expand the walkway here, but then kind of cut down on the footprint
Yeah.
farther out?
Turn that into an elevated set of stairs to the beach or something that, I don't believe that we would approve at-grade walkways the way this is configured now currently.
And
But
understood, that's good feedback. Just to be clear though, that platform does exist. It's not being expanded, but I think, and we're gonna show you pictures next week that show you how it looks to get that full sense, but there is no expansion of that anyway. That is actually what exists now, and I'm simply wanting to keep what is there. That, in fact, Tom Gorenflow, who's done work for me for 20 years on Plum Island, came out and actually looked at the understructure and felt that it was very secure. And simply all that would be done there was the surface being replaced with a Trex or some composite decking material that will last us 30 years from now. So there was I don't even think any infrastructure is going to need to be touched there outside of the surface.
so Bob had, what I was getting at was just what Bob said. If you're increasing this, if you're increasing the square footage in one area, maybe you can skim some off in another.
Perfect. That's perfectly said. I'll take that back to Tom.
So the visual you should have, David, no net gain
Yeah,
on the dune.
got it. Perfect.
Okay.
Clear instruction. Even I can understand that.
Okay. So you know what, team? We've been kicking this around. David, do you want to request a continuance?
I'm concerned that if I don't and don't have Tom here, that there may be some, but I can't ask the board to say, well, I'd continue it if we need more information from Tom. But if you're saying like for like, square footage for square footage, without having to do the raised elevation of the walkway, I don't know, Sam, you know what? You're my friend. Like, what's your advice? Should I continue it till Tom can come?
Well, you know what? Let me do this actually. Based on the remaining questions, do any members have any requests for additional information or plan amendment or adding additional content to this notice of intent.
So I would
think
just,
I think we've made a number of points, Mary. in
right,
advance.
just that we don't have a DEP file number, is that correct? And that they don't have comments, so I would,
We do have
Yeah,
DEP
we have
file
the file
number.
oh, okay, and then I
Yeah.
misunderstood. All right.
Yep.
And I think the only comments that were on there were that they were waiting for plans.
At
Right.
Tom Hughes's advice, I'd like to continue this for 2 weeks so that we can get the DEP comments, if there are any. We get the plans to them, they can see them. All of this advice is great. Sam will follow up with you tomorrow. We can get with Tom Hughes and we'll come back on November 15th for hopefully a final approval.
Okay, so you're requesting a continuance to November 15th?
Yes, sir, please.
All right. Do we have a motion to close? Well, we're not going to close the public.
Move to
hearing.
continue.
We have a motion to continue to
Second.
November 15th. We have a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Roll call. TJ,
Aye.
Pete,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes,
Diane,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay, thanks, David. See you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Right, let's see where we're at now.
Brad, did you have your hand up for,
I did. Mr. Chair, for the record, 30 per the international, with the international code with the Massachusetts amendment, any structure above 30 inches above grade needs
Requires
to-
railings, right? Yeah, it's a moot point at this point, but you're exactly right, Brad.
my apologies, when I was
No,
talking to people about it yesterday, we were talking about ADA accessibility and they said, oh, anything over 36. So that was where that one came from.
Yeah, it's actually 30, but
30,
no, that's
okay.
you're close
So
enough.
that's,
Sam.
so that's the cogent advice that we stick to our jurisdiction and we do what we do best. so.
Correct.
And that's exactly why I said call the building commissioner.
Yeah, no,
Don't trust what I said.
It's a moving target, as we all know. All right, team. So we have a continued public hearing for 330 3rd Street. Sam, is this going off tonight or is it being continued?
I got a late request for a continuance. Unfortunately, the applicant still has not been able to get their legal representation nailed down. So Tom provided a late request for a continuance. He is requesting this one to go to December 6th as well, so that they can hopefully figure out what their legal rep is doing.
Okay, do we have a motion to continue the public hearing to
So
December
moved.
6, 2022? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, Mary,
yes,
Pete,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Diane,
Yes.
TJ,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. All right, our last continued public hearing is the one and only 140R Main Street. Sam, there's been a request to continue this to 11.
Yes,
11,
Rob
15.
requested a continuance for this one to the November 15th meeting. And I believe I'm actually going to have some additional stuff to be putting in the Dropbox tomorrow. I think I have some comments from Joe Sawarka that he
Okay.
provided to the planning board that has a lot to do with stuff that involves us too, so.
Okay, great. All right, the applicants requested a continuance to November 15th. Do we have a motion to continue the public hearing to November 15th?
So moved.
2022? Do we have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote. TJ,
Aye.
Pete,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
Mary,
yes.
Diane,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay.
I note that we still do not have a DEP file number for
Yeah.
the project, so they're doing.
No idea
something
what's
wrong.
going on with that.
No, I mean, I think that they don't, this is a firm that doesn't typically file these, and so they've gotten
Yeah.
caught up in some detail that isn't being corrected.
Probably the 3 inches thick plans that have to be reviewed, Mary, that an analyst is avoiding to take a peek at
Yeah.
apparently, but.
I
All right,
wouldn't
so,
blame 'em.
so Sam, I think we're at the administration part of the meeting.
Yes.
And so why don't we, at the last meeting, Brad, you had raised a question about frequency of meetings. Sam has done some research on that. And Sam, why don't you give us an update?
Yeah, so generally speaking, towns that are much smaller than ours and have a much lighter workload, they get a lot less applications, can kind of get away with doing one meeting a month because they have so few that it doesn't make sense to do more than one. Generally, towns that get especially as busy as we do, because we get so many applications in all year long, try to stay at no more than, or no longer than 3 weeks between meetings. Most towns typically go with either 2 meetings a month or they go every 3 weeks. Part of the every 3 weeks thing is that under the WPA regulations, we are required to provide a hearing date, to actually hold a hearing for a new application within 21 days of receipt. There are some towns that can do waivers for that, but I've talked to a few consultants about that, and a lot of them aren't sure how well that holds up in court. And I've kind of gotten some comments from town council in passing saying that she's not sure how well it would stand up in court if somebody argued that, even if they did agree to waive the 21 days. So when I went back and looked at our meeting schedule, I think it would be best to, at the very least, wait until January to start a new meeting schedule. I did put a new draft of one with a 3-week meeting schedule kind of in place, which cuts us down from 24 meetings a month to 24 meetings a year to 18 meetings a year. And it's still, that 3-week schedule still gives us that, opportunity to say, you're not going to be waiting more. Generally, you're probably not going to be waiting more than possibly 3, maybe 4 weeks, depending on when you submit an application. Unfortunately, going down to 1 meeting a month gets us into very dangerous territory. People could end up potentially waiting 4 to 6 weeks just to get into their first hearing, which is, I think, really unfair to people. Not to mention that when we start to cut down the number of meetings, especially when you start to get into summer where we're getting more applications and we're busier, there's more field work and stuff to do, that 1 meeting a month is gonna, I have a half-hour drive to leave here to get home.
So
And
Sam,
if we're only
Sam,
doing 1 meeting a month.
Let me just ask you a question. I think you did a good job covering the 1 meeting a month is for smaller towns, probably not a coastal community. Every 3 weeks is probably a good fit for our town. In more urban areas, every 2 weeks, or from a city standpoint. So I think the clarity we need is someone doesn't get a hearing in 21 days. They don't go to court. They can go directly to DEP and bypasses, correct? That's their only remedy.
Right, so they would go, everything would get sent to DEP, they would be allowed to bypass our bylaw. It wouldn't necessarily go to court, but if we tried to fight that, then I don't know how well a waiver would hold up in our favor.
Yeah. So that's the one drawback if we go to once a month and someone wants to go to DEP directly, which I really can't imagine a consultant worth their salt wants to bypass a reasonable committee or commission and go back to DEP, which could require, as we know, more substantial information. I'm going to make a suggestion. I think let's look at this over this fiscal year. In 90 days, we just came out with a new schedule. I think it would be more prudent that between now and 90 days before the end of this fiscal year, which would be around March 1st, we decide. I still think there may be some times where there's months that we can meet once a month, and other months we meet every 3 weeks. I think there's some, but we don't have to make a decision tonight. And I think in fairness to give notice to the consultants and our applicants and residents, it should be something that if we're going to change it at this point, I'm more comfortable looking at it as a July 1 start date than a January 1, but that's just my
And-
opinion.
And just to give people a little bit of food for thought, I was talking to somebody about this today, and a suggestion that was made to me was to keep 2 meetings a month for the majority of the year, but in the months where we have 2 holidays, which would be November and basically November through January, in the months where we have 2 holidays or it's a busy holiday season, cut it down to 1 meeting a month. That way, because especially, you know, our second meeting in December is 5 days before Christmas, and our first meeting in January is 3 days after New Year's, 2 days after New Year's. So that's a really kind of busy season for a lot of people. It's a busy travel season. It's hard for people to get into stuff like that. So one of the suggestions that was made to me would be to cut it down to say like either just December 20th or like just the second meeting in December or just the first in July, or sorry, January, or just the second, kind of cut it down in those winter months to 1 meeting a month.
So for November, December, January, meet once a month rather than twice a month.
Right.
Okay.
And Mary's got her hand up as well.
Yeah, Mary, what are your thoughts on this?
You know, and just quickly, and I agree, you know, we just probably should mull this over and see how the schedule is working over time, but just bearing in mind that an applicant has to file 2 weeks before,
right,
you know, a filing deadline, and then so if they're ready to file, but they're not having a hearing for 4 weeks, and then we continue them for another month, it stretches out their timeline quite a bit. And
right.
If we do monthly or even 3 weeks, and the meetings get very long, because we've done that in the past, and they do tend to get long. And the other point, small point I wanted to make, is that a large majority of the projects that we review are pretty small stuff on Plum Island, and making people wait that long might cause some hard feelings. So, you know, other bigger projects, yes, it's going to take a while, but you know, the types of things that we saw tonight, it's kind of a shame to make people wait longer than necessary to do these minor projects.
You know, let's just go and get everyone's opinion. TJ, what are your thoughts on this?
I like Sam's opinion too, you know, November, December, January, one a month, those 3 months.
Okay. Pete, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, you're not gonna like me, but I'm okay with 2 times a month, because when you start getting into these long meetings, after 2 hours, people they lose it. So.
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with you, Pete, that it's you know, I'm a morning guy. I'd rather be meeting at 6 in the morning than at 7 at night, to be honest. But all right, Brad, you brought it up, so we know where you stand.
Well, maybe you don't, Mr. Chair. The reason I brought it up is because I do know that 5 or 6 years ago, this commission met once per month, because I was one of those applicants that went through and took 4 months to get something approved. I'm not suggesting that 2 weeks is too much or once a month is not enough. I just wanted to bring up the discussion with the rest of the commission to see how they felt about it. I agree. The idea of having applicants wait, as Mary brought up, for minor things that need to be approved by this commission for 4 or 6 weeks, I think is grossly unfair. And I'm also of the ilk that I do not want to be on a Zoom call or in person at a meeting at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, so I think we're going to come up with a hybrid plan that's somewhere in between. And I'll be honest, our meetings should be an hour and a half, hour and 3/4. Occasionally they should go over, but you know, if we're efficient and people are prepared, I mean, 2 hours should be the max that we're
Agreed.
doing this, especially at this time of night. Dan, what are your thoughts? You enjoyed the benefit, Dan, of meeting once a month. Any pearls of wisdom why we changed?
There was a different time, you know. I mean, I think when Doug was the agent, you know, he kind of did a little more of the work than I mean, not that Sam's not working hard, but, it was well organized beforehand, so we got through pretty big schedules quickly. But personally, I think the 3 weeks would probably work well for us.
Okay. Diane, what are your thoughts? Thank you, Dan.
I like the idea of maybe just limiting it during the seasons where maybe the workload isn't as much, but otherwise I'd go for the shorter meetings, twice a week, shorter meeting.
Wait a minute, twice a week, we're gonna meet 8 times a
Oh,
month
not
now?
twice a week. Oh my God, that would be a short meeting.
My
Twice
resignation
a
is
month.
being typed, it will be
And
twice a
mine.
week.
Actually, I want to meet every night. I enjoy this very much.
Oh my God, we gotta get you another puppy or something. All right, you know what? I think the plan is, let's just keep it kind of on the front burner, but I think we stick to the plan right now to March. Then we formulate what we're gonna do for July 1, which is the new fiscal year.
And can I throw one more quick thing out, just
Yeah,
again,
sure.
another
Go ahead.
thing
Joe.
to consider? So considering how long our meetings go and that we start very late at night, another thing, totally just throwing it out there, another possibility would be to adjusting the time of our meeting. So maybe moving it up in the night a little bit more, even kicking it up to like 6 o'clock. Because a lot of times we're fighting too with a lot of other towns that meet. Newburyport meets the same night as us, and there's a few other towns that meet the same night as us. So, and at the same time too. So another thing that could be considered at some point would be to change the timing of our meetings as well.
You know, I think you bring up a good point. Are we locked in? I mean, we were meeting, they're all Zoom meetings. We're not fighting for a, conference room. Does Tuesday night, I mean, if we're going to talk about this, let's think about, is Tuesday night the best time? I mean, Mary, where you're competing with going to other meetings in different towns.
Yeah, Tuesday's one of the more popular nights.
Is there a better night to do this? Yeah, that kind of works for everybody.
And I can do a little bit of research on that too, to see what some of the surrounding towns have for meeting days. I wasn't necessarily suggesting changing the date, the day of the week of the meeting, but
yeah, but if we're going to look at it, let's look at it.
Right, might as well look at everything. And I can do some research on what some of the surrounding towns have for days of the week that they meet and make a list.
Yeah,
I could do 6:30, but I couldn't really do 6, I don't think.
I think because sometimes it's coming out of Boston traffic and it becomes a problem. But so let's
We've
really
got Brad's hand up too. Sorry.
Yeah, Brad. Go ahead, Brad.
Mr. Chair, I would just suggest that we not only look at the different days of the week, but we also concentrate on what other competing boards we may be in our town. I'm less concerned about what other towns do. I'm more concerned about what our town does. And that we are not in conflict with another board that may be one of our applicants or one of our participants of this commission may serve on.
You know what? All good discussion. Let's kick this thing around. And Sam, you know what to do? Put this on the, why don't you just keep this an open item on administration for us, all right? And that way there, we'll get bits and pieces of how this will work out for us. And I think it would be good to go.
Do you want me to add this to like our agendas for like once a month, so that like the beginning of every month until March?
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, why don't you do this? Just leave it under administration as A. And you know what? And if there's anything to add to it, or I think, what it'll be when we're all going to other meetings. I mean, Pete, what night? You're Wednesdays, aren't you, on the planning board?
Yeah, and currently we're in the world of Zoom, but if we go back to in person, then you're going to be, you're going to have room conflicts.
Right.
So,
yeah. So, okay. All right. Well, you know what? Why don't we move on if there's no other discussion on this? All right. So the last matter is there is a special permit application review for a change of use request submitted to the select board by Damon Jesperson for 1 Marsh Meadow, I want to say Marshmallow Lane, but Marsh Meadow Lane. And so I'll read the bylaw. Petitions or application for a special permit under the special permit bylaw shall be submitted to and reviewed by the following such boards held either jointly or severally, the Board of Health, Planning Board, Conservation Commission, and any other board or commission of the town which petition or application to submit for review. Any such board or commission to which petitions or applications are referred for review shall make such recommendations as they deem appropriate and send copies thereof to the Selectmen, Planning Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, as applicable, and to the applicant. However, the failure of any such board or commission to make recommendations within 35 days of receipt of such board or commission petition for application shall be deemed lack of opposition to. So this just came in. Sam, when did this come in? On Thursday? Is that going to be our?
I got it on Wednesday last week. It came in.
Okay, so what was that? What's the date on that? That's 10.
That was the
26th.
26th. Yes.
So 10/26 basically starts the clock. So it's a two-step process, team. This is to give recommendations to the select board so that they can incorporate our recommendations and other boards and committees' recommendations in their approach to addressing the application. It doesn't negate the fact that if there are other jurisdictional matters that the applicant still has to come before the appropriate boards or commissions that retain jurisdiction. And you know, in looking at it quickly, to be honest with you, the only couple of jurisdictional matters that may apply is, and Dan, you were probably around when this went on, there is a conservation restriction dated July 21st, 2014. So, I mean, it would seem broad brush that the two potential jurisdictional matters on the application are compliance with the conservation restriction and compliance with the Wetlands Protection Act, if there is any jurisdictional matters. What I would suggest is, this just came in, it's in the Dropbox. I think it'd be helpful if you take a peek at it. I think put your reading glasses on, there's a few pages there. But I think it would be wise to have Sam review it and come back to us at our next meeting with her recommendations and thoughts. And why don't I just open that up? Mary, does that sound like a plan?
Yes, I have not had a chance to look at it, so that would be helpful. Do we know generally what he's trying to do, what the purpose is of the change?
It's basically, from what I can gather, is it's currently a barn that is used for agriculture storage of hay, and they're trying to use it for more recreational use. They're not modifying the structure. It's a use change. But you know what? I don't even want to get into that, Mary, because you know what? I'm one step ahead of the rest of you just because it came in the file. But all right, Pete, you're probably more familiar with this than many where it's on the planning board's radar.
Yeah, it'll be coming before planning tomorrow as well.
Okay. Brad, does it sound like a good idea to have Sam do a deep dive on this and report back to us?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brad. Dan, any thoughts?
Yeah, can you hear me? Because my screen just went black, but if you can hear me, I just
Yes,
wanted
yeah, we can hear you fine, Dan.
We
I
can
just
see
wanted
you.
to mention that the couple things that I saw that stood out. I did look at the plans. The real issue to me seems to be parking, and I don't think, you know, there is some overflow parking shown in the open space area. I don't know how that's going to play. And there's also parking in the buffer zone alongside the road, the way I saw the plan. Those are just a couple of things I noticed that, you know, I think are going to, we may want to take a good look at.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we're just making recommendations of what next steps may be needed to the select board. And then certainly we have jurisdiction, then the applicant would be required, like anyone else, to come before us. Jen, anything else? Okay. TJ, any thoughts on this one?
No, I think I'll wait till after the deep dive.
Okay. Diane, what are your thoughts on this?
And I think, more of the jurisdictional issues when they come before us, I guess we'll be diving into parking and all that. In that conservation restriction, I've read through it. There's a lot there.
Of course you've read through it.
There's a lot there, but I agree with Dan that, it's gonna need to be looked at, but until we actually have a plan in front of us that sort of shows you where everything is, and we'll go through the process.
I agree. So with that, I mean, this doesn't require a vote, but I think we're in agreement that, Sam, why don't you review what's there, kind of pinpoint, the highlights or jurisdictional issues that we could be reviewing. And I think the lack of a plan, I didn't see a site plan that showed, located the usual building, parking, buffer, resource, or whatever. That wasn't part of it at this point, but all right. Well, other than that, team, do we have a motion to adjourn, or does anyone have the final word?
You've got somebody with their hand up, Bob.
Who's got? Yeah, this isn't, yeah, but Jack, we're not having a public hearing on this.
It's just a point of order that the select board is voting November 7th on the issue, and they're looking for your recommendation now. If you don't review it now, the recommendation will be moot because of the November 7th vote. Just a point.
Jack, the hearing for them got continued to November 7th. There is no guarantee that they're not definitely going to vote on it. It's just been continued until then.
And the bylaw, Jack, is 35 days. So, and everyone has to comply with the bylaw. Okay.
Very good.
All right. So do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
All right. Mary, all those in favor say aye.
Hi.
Mary, Pete, Brad.
Yes.
Dan,
Aye.
TJ,
Yes.
Diane. And the
Yes.
chair votes yes. Well, it's 8:43. So we're getting close, guys. That's an hour and 43 minutes.
Very well.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Night.
Bye. Good night.